Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. How are you doing this morning? Hopefully you're enjoying the delectable cuisine back there and you had a chance to say hi to some of the people you might not have seen for a while or met some new ones. I'm LaTanya West, the managing editor of the Voice and Viewpoint newspaper, and I am here to welcome you to Biscuits, Grits, and Politics. Yes. Thank you so much for coming. We're going to have some thought-provoking, in-depth, always educational conversation about the issues that matter to you. And ladies and gentlemen, you are in for a treat this morning with the host of Biscuits, Grits, and Politics, the Master. I call him the Master because I don't know if you know, but he has an encyclopedic knowledge of San Diego. And not just San Diego, but San Diego in the context of the state of California and the nation, yes. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to the publisher of the Voice and Viewpoint newspaper, the iconic, the one and only, Dr. John E. Warren.
She makes me feel like I'm doing a late night talk show, you know. Everybody claps on cue and all that. Yeah. Good morning and welcome. We're so glad to have all of you here. This was an experiment, and it seems like it's successful. For those who are still in line, we apologize, but it's still hot. And so we're going to improve on it as we go. We're going to make it better. We had open seating arrangements here because you know that old expression, the early bird gets the worm, so the one who gets early, they get the choice pickings and everything. And so we wanted to make this that kind of an event. I want to do something that's not on the program. I want to ask Pastor Nate Stewart. He's not expecting it, but the men of God are always ready. If he would come up and give us a word of prayer. Of course, we blessed this food while they were cooking it, but we want to do this for everybody else. So, Pastor Stewart, not a Baptist word of prayer, just a brief word of prayer.
Let's pray. Good morning, everybody. Let's have a word of prayer. Lord God, we love you. We thank you for this time, this gathering, this fellowship. Thank you for the empowerment and hope that will come forth from this day. Thank you for the organizers. Thank you for Dr. Warren, the work that he's doing for many years in this community. Bless all those who will participate today. Thank you for the food. Thank you for those who catered the food. We pray that it will bring nourishment to all of our bodies. In Christ's name, amen.
All right. Thank you, Pastor. I can talk about pastors since I happen to be one. Okay, so we're not picking on them. Okay, we are really excited here. You know, when we started this before the pandemic, we were just trying very hard to bring us together. Some of us are from the South, so we understand the importance of grits with our fish, and some people like salt and butter with their grits, and I heard some people put sugar on their grits. I haven't been able to figure that one out yet, but the cheese, and so we're going to improve upon it. To Nellie's Kitchen, we had an agreement that we were going to keep these biscuits hot and buttery, so I hope they didn't get cold on you. If they did, it wasn't her fault because she started right on time in terms of what we wanted to have done. And so this morning, we are doing something that coincidentally is a reflection of something we had long ago. Many years ago, we had the Catfish Club here in San Diego. And a few of you might remember, this was long before the internet, and Reverend George Walker Smith and Judge Gilliam and a group of guys used to get together on Fridays and just talk, and it grew. It grew to the point that when I came here in the late 80s, you just couldn't come into San Diego without coming by the Catfish Club, okay? And so we weren't trying to imitate that, but we just happened to love catfish nuggets and grits and the scrambled eggs and all of that. So I said, well, let's just call it Biscuits, Grits, and the Politics. I'm going to say a word. We're excited this morning. We have two outstanding guests with us who are going to speak. And we have this set up so that they will make a presentation, and then we will have a Q&A session. And so I'm an old college professor and political scientist, and I am always concerned about the perceptions that people have versus the reality of things from an educational standpoint. And so a lot of us, I decided, hear and use the term politics, but politics has gotten a bad name from being misused by some people that didn't have the character that should have been with it. The whole idea of politics is the coming together of people, having a discussion, and agreeing on what is a fair and equitable distribution of whatever resources or items are on the table in terms of discussion. So that's the politics part. Now, some of us have heard an expression that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And so many people find themselves on the menu because they're not participating in the discussion. And so this politics part is to make this a forum. This is going to be ongoing. It's going to be monthly. We have a phenomenal schedule for both October and November, and I think that you will love them, and they will be very inspirational. And then we're going to stop in December, and we'll come back next year. But this is going to be a monthly breakfast and forum, and it's intended to grow. And so those of you who have ideas of particular topics that you might want us to look at, we're going to ask that you, just submit them, drop them to the paper, email, or whatever, and we'll be planning to go ahead. We're also streaming this because we are preparing to present this concept internationally as well as nationally in terms of what we're doing. And so many people who look at San Diego through Voice and Viewpoint and our programs, they think that we really have it going on, that we're really on top of it. So we don't tell them any different. But we're still trying. We're still trying to get there, okay? And so that's the politics part. You might not see all of it, but in line with the politics, the first person that is going to speak today is so significantly important. Mr. Mitch Mitchell is a senior vice president at SDG&E and Center for Intergovernmental Affairs. Now, a lot of you don't know that both the city and the county of San Diego, they have people in Sacramento and Washington every day in terms of programs, legislation, items that they want to make sure that are funded to help San Diego. And so Mr. Mitchell takes those things that are of concern to his business interests, and he makes sure that there is a mixture of the business interests and the community concerns, because they are quasi-regulated from a governmental standpoint. People have a concern. And so what I want to help you do with this start out meeting is help you understand the relationship between the kinds of laws that are affecting us, the policy that's made, and how that policy is set up, and how it comes about. And I think that when we understand that, it will stimulate us to be more involved. The second person who's going to speak today is Chida Warren Darby. You recognize the Warren part of the name. And she is the director of boards and commissions for the city of San Diego as a part of the mayor's staff. Now, what many of you don't know, because parents can sometimes be slow, Chida brought this idea to me almost 7 years ago. She was pushing for me to do something like this. Well, some of us are slow. It took me a while, but we got here. Eventually, we got here. And it's an important concept. And what you also don't know is that in addition to having grown up in Voice and Viewpoint and having been a co-publisher for a while, Chida was the first executive director of the San Diego County Black Chamber after a mother who created the original Black Chamber of Commerce here. And so she was very active statewide with all of the other chambers and to some degree nationally. So she knows this stuff inside and out. But what has happened is, historically in San Diego, we did not bother to be on boards and commissions. And I like us to know that that's not an accident, it was by design. Because those cities that do not provide a stipend or any kind of pay for the working regular people, by structure excludes them from the process. And so historically then we have a lot of retired rich white folks. They used to have a couple of black pastors because they didn't have to work much, and an undertaker, and they would be the ones that would be on the boards, but they weren't necessarily representative of the people. And so what we want to see here is that we stimulate an interest with you so that you start thinking as we move toward this year. We've got, in 5 months, we have a primary coming up in the state of California, a very significant primary that's going to take place. In just a few weeks, we have a special election to fill the seat on the San Diego County Board of Supervisors, the 4th District. And so all of these things are important to us. So I don't want to talk longer than I should because I have this habit, I don't know when to stop. And so I'm gonna pause at this point. But before Mr. Mitchell comes up, I want to invite up Miss Donna Dewberry, who is the president of the San Diego County Black Chamber. And many of you have met Donna, and we fight all the time, but we have good fights, okay? And so when I was talking to Donna about this concept, she said, oh, by all means, I want the Black Chamber to be a part of it. And so they reached out in a major way in terms of sponsorship to help make this morning possible, because you probably know there's no way you can go and get this breakfast for 20 bucks, okay? And so Donna has a few things I want her to share with you, because this is all a part of the concept of politics and public policy. Donna?
Well, good morning, everyone. I had to put my cheaters on. As you get older, you know. I'm still in denial, by the way. So, first of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Warren because he's such a visionary, and he is a wealth of knowledge, but more importantly, he is not only a staple in this community, but he's also still fighting the battle to make sure that underrepresented communities, this underrepresented community, this underserved community, is being heard. And so thank you, Dr. Warren, for all that you do for the Voice and Viewpoint. The second thing I'd like to do really quick is just introduce my team right here. We have a very young and vivacious team. And so if y'all could just stand up just for a second. We have other team members, but they certainly did want to come and listen to this today. And I only have 2 more things to say. First, biscuits and grits. Lord, yes. This is how we fuel the soul early in the morning, and I am so thankful. I've already, biscuits. Okay, sorry. So good, so good. But I want to just say we sponsored this because this is in alignment with our mission, and our mission is to create generational wealth. And so when we think about what we've done in the community, we have given away in grants over $3 million to businesses in this community, and to over 1,000 businesses. So businesses are here. Black-owned businesses are in this community. And it's really important that you know that we have the resources and the tools and the money to help Black-owned businesses, not only start up, but not just to survive, but to thrive. And so if you need any help, if you need tools and resources, we're here for you. And the last thing I want to say is that our voice, our victory, and our vision can only happen in this community when we take a stand, and an unwavering, unmovable, and unapologetic stand. And when we do that, that's when we're going to create this generational wealth, because it's critical to the next generation. So I hope today that this is a great conversation, but that it moves you and it leads you into action. And when you lead into action, you lead into impact. So thank you all very much for being here today.
The next group I want to acknowledge and I really appreciate the partnership, and we're going to be doing more things with the Black Chamber. And the Chamber is always very dear to my heart because, as I've told the story before, my late wife, Jerry Warren, was the executive vice president of the D.C. Chamber of Commerce. And all of this grew out of that experience because at the time that she was in that position, I was in my senior year of law school, and Howard University had a small business development center within the School of Business and Public Administration. And because in my undergraduate years, I had been one of the students that founded the Department of Business, that's now the School of Business, I would go back and volunteer to help people who were going in business set up their businesses. So whether there was a partnership, corporation, or whatever. And so we saw the need here, and not only did we do the chamber here, but we went to Sacramento and worked with that chamber. We went to Texas, we went to Las Vegas. We went wherever people were in a community that were Black and had a sense of business but didn't know what to do with it. And so we worked and helped them establish those chambers. And what many people don't know is that at one point, Jerry was an ex officio member of the DC Chamber of Commerce, and they came to us and asked for a partnership because when we set the chamber up, I started going after all their grant money. And they decided it was better to be friends than to have me take their money. And so, but that's what you do when you understand policy and how it works. You cut yourself in on what's taking place. And so the next partner that I want to acknowledge here today is the United Domestic Workers. And I want the people from UDW to stand because UDW is a very strong partnership, okay? And as you know, thank you, this is a very special time for labor with the many strikes that are going on and the efforts to get a greater share of the pie. But what some of the people here don't know is that San Diego has a chapter of the A. Philip Randolph Institute. And that institute was established by a man named Norman Hill almost 40 years ago. And Norman and I were very close friends, and I was very involved with him when he created the A. Philip Randolph Institute. So I come from labor, labor in every way. And so matter of fact, I'm a labor lawyer by training. And so we have been very proud of the relationship because, again, we bring the people together who are the community, who are doing the things that make the difference in the community. And I say all of this because you don't know who it is that you're sitting next to, and you need to get to know them and just not assume that you're more important. Oh, I didn't say that, did I? I'm sorry. But let's just get to know people, okay? In a spirit of humility, because we don't know who they're going to be tomorrow, and they don't know who you're going to be tomorrow. And we don't wait till tomorrow comes. We start working now. So having said those things, Mitch, I want to invite you up. And Mitch Mitchell needs no further introduction. Everybody knows him. He is a man that's got his hands on the pulse. I don't think Sacramento really moves without Mitch, but he doesn't want anybody to know that. Okay, so Mitch, come on, as they say, come on down, and we welcome you here. Let's give a hand to Mitch Mitchell.
So I want to say, first of all, good morning to everybody. It is a pleasure to be here bright and early. Someone said to me, boy, you look refreshed and happy. And Dr. Warren and I were talking this morning because he went to bed early yesterday, really early. He told me what time he went to bed. I'm like, that early? So he has to be refreshed. But I want to echo what Donna said a minute ago, which is, Dr. Warren, I'm so impressed with how you continually push us, remind us that we need to be vocal and we need to be heard, and that we need to have expectations about moving forward. And this event, and I was one of those that remember the Catfish Club. You know, I used to leave and need a nap after the Catfish Club. I'd eat well, I'd listen, but I needed a nap afterwards. So it is a pleasure to be here to talk to you a little bit about what Dr. Warren described as the process that governs us. And it's important to take note of the fact that the process, in my opinion, is broken a lot. It's broken. And it's broken because you hear this old adage that you have better decision making when you have perspective from all in the process of making that decision. But that doesn't always happen. Too often today in government, there are a lot of decisions being made without all the perspectives, without all the people. And you know, I learned a long time ago that sometimes you just have to remind people that it's broken. And I want to tell you a quick story about something I worked with Dr. Warren and the late Jerry Warren on years ago, and it's a good example of broken. So the NFL, you know, it's a small league. We all know about it. Every Sunday, now on Thursdays, Mondays, you know, everybody's got something going on with the NFL. And I remember the NFL was coming to San Diego for the 2003 Super Bowl. And there was a problem that they were having, and it was that they were being criticized, which they couldn't believe it. We're the NFL. We were being criticized because whenever the Super Bowl arrived in town, when they, you know, for 14 days, when it was all said and done, people were starting to look at what the impact was of the NFL on that community. Did they leave a trail of goodwill, of positive economic benefit, of community improvement? And the fact was they weren't. And so the NFL said, well, why are we getting criticism? And when they looked at underneath the hood, they said, well, you're not utilizing any of the local diverse businesses to entertain all of your corporate clients. And the NFL was like, well, you know, we've tried, it doesn't work. But what they would do is they were bringing in the people they knew. And I remember calling Dr. Warren because I made a proposal to the NFL. I said, listen, why don't you let us run it here? We'll connect you to all the people that want to serve those corporate clients, and let's see how it works. Now, the underlying fact was when the game was here in 1998, the NFL was here, and that Denver versus Green Bay, I believe it was that year. And when it was all said and done, the NFL spent $300,000 with all the diverse businesses in San Diego. $300,000 in 14 days. And I said, well, I can kind of understand why you guys are getting criticized. And so we went to them and said, look, let us build something here in San Diego that's really impactful. And when it was all said and done, we rewrote the whole program. The NFL actually got a standing ovation because we introduced them to, if you really care to involve everyone, here's a structure to do it. And in the end, you know, they spent $6.5 million with diverse businesses in 10 days. And I remember saying, you know, that's what we should expect, expectation. And so when I use that story to tie into politics, expectation. I've been around City Hall in San Diego since 1992. I was a young lobbyist working the floors when Reverend George Stevens was there, and I would listen to him talk about, you know, the issues in the community that he wanted to talk about. And I followed that with my good friend, the late Charles Lewis, and we would talk about the same thing. And I remember one day I said, you know what? What's missing at City Hall is us. Flat out, plain and simple. What's missing at City Hall is us. Consistently, weekly, regularly. Because they're discussing all these things that supposedly impact us, but they haven't asked us what it is that we want or we need. And I remember when I soon began to travel to Sacramento, and I was amazed at Sacramento because it's 120 people who've been elected to come up and represent the people of California. Simple concept, representative government. And I began to notice that it's kind of hard to represent the people of California when the people elected, they're having these discussions, don't look like everyone in California. And you know, it was this eye-opening experience for me because you're having conversations about, you'll often hear me say in speeches, kitchen table issues, right? Everybody has a kitchen table conversation or a breakfast table conversation. We complain about housing prices, gas prices, it's too hot, it's too cold, bills, right? Everybody has a kitchen table conversation. And Sacramento is supposed to be this area where they're talking about how to address those kitchen table conversations and address those policy issues that keep us up at night, that scare us. But again, you know, I remember the caucus, the Black Caucus that year, one year, was like 4 or 5 members out of 120. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, it's going to be kind of hard to really think about everybody when the caucuses are so small and aren't necessarily in a seat of power. Now, I'm lucky because one of the people that mentors me regularly, still to this day, is Mayor Willie Brown, and he tells great stories about how he would manage Sacramento. And I was a student of the process. I would watch Speaker Brown remind people that he was speaker in the most eloquent way, but he would tell them when they were way off base, and he would tell them when they needed to course correct. And when he left, I think we will look back in history in California and realize what a fantastic thing that he was doing when he was in Sacramento, because he was trying to actually remind people that it's about everyone, not just a few, as you say. And so, fast forward to after all these years of being around government, what I've realized that it's still broken. So last year, I started a project. And I remember I called Tony Young and I said, Tony, I have an issue. We keep talking about politics and how it's supposed to be representative. I was just like, you know, I said, so I decided to do this project where every quarter I would poll. And I set the poll up where 50% of the respondents were Caucasian and 50% were Black, Latino, and Asian. And I said, my intent for this project is I want to see if what the press keeps telling me is actually true. And what I meant by that is we live in a 24-hour news cycle, right? But in the end, people walk by and they see the headline of the Union Tribune or they see the headline of the LA Times. Not everybody is John Warren voice and viewpoint. and you see these headlines and it tells you what you think. And I was like, I don't know that this is true. So we began polling. And the first question we ask in the poll every time is, what are the top 5 issues that come to mind for you right now that are the biggest concern? So our first poll was in June of last year. And you guys remember June, gas prices. Woo! I have 2 daughters, and I was like, you guys need to stop driving, or at least you need to start paying for gas. Gas was $6.50 a gallon. I was in LA one day, and gas was $7.52 a gallon. And I remember I pulled into that gas station to get gas. I put the thing out and I pulled off. Right? I wasn't paying $7.50 a gallon for gas. And so we did this poll, and we said, hey, what are the issues that really come to mind? And this project really launched this new belief. And the poll showed that the number one issue in the minds of San Diegans, Black, white, Asian, Latino, was homelessness. Homelessness was number 1. Housing affordability was number 2, and gas prices was number 3. So we got this small group together, and we talked about it. And we got the group together the right way. We had Black voices, Latino voices, Asian voices, white voices. We wanted to use this as an opportunity to educate each other and talk about what the solutions were to these issues. So we continued to do the poll. 4 polls each quarter. Number 1 issue, homelessness. Number 2, housing affordability, right? And 3 and 4 and 5 would always change. But I will tell you what we learned in this. The Union Tribune, when gas prices were high, had a headline that said, most people looking to buy an electric vehicle to combat high gas prices. I said, that's kind of funny. That's actually cute. We polled on it, and what the results of the poll showed was, in this order, white respondents, yes, I want to buy an EV. Asian respondents, I'm looking at it, maybe. Latino respondents, fix the damn mass transit system. Stop telling me to buy a car. Fix the trolley. Fix the buses. Black respondents, nope. I'll ride a bike. I'll ride a motorcycle. I'll find something to ride, but I'm not buying an EV. But what the press wanted you to believe was this is what we wanted, right? And I just remember telling everybody, I said, this is why this project's so important. We have to remind each other that we have opinions, and it's okay. We have to remind each other that when we have those opinions, we need to be vocal and tell people what we want and need. And so we continue to poll, and there were some great ones. Sandag. You hear about Sandag all the time. This is the planning agency for San Diego. And, the polling showed that voters don't trust Sandag, right? Sandag couldn't sell you something for free right now. And that's just the harsh reality. But Sandag has a role. How do they help you and your communities move to and from? Are they listening to you? Are they asking you what you want, what you need? More buses, more trolleys, more trains, more e-bikes. Are they asking you? And so I think the project has actually proven something, which is we need to be louder consistently. We need to talk about what we want and what we need. We polled on fentanyl. I was actually surprised by the results. It's what everybody's discussing. It's ruining communities. I was more shocked by the responses from coastal San Diego. They see it. They're afraid of it. The results were actually more surprising because I expected somewhat the stories and the answers that I heard from the Black and Latino voters, but I was surprised by fentanyl. There were moments in the poll results, and this is important, where Black respondents' thoughts and needs aligned more with Republican philosophy. I mean, it was a shock, but there were pieces and parts where Black respondents' thoughts align more with sometimes the Republican philosophy on some issues. And I said, well, that's not bad. You know what it told me is, you need to ask us, right? Don't just assume that whatever one party says is what we all believe. And so, when you think about it, the project, we're going to continue the project. We're going to relaunch it again in January with the same focus, but a new frame. We want people to hear more about it, about what we want, what we need. And you'll probably hear me talking about kind of combined with Dr. Warren on this. I think that what I would say about the going forward, I've watched public policy making. I've had a front row seat. I've written bills that have been signed into law. I have watched the process in Sacramento and City Hall, and I've watched the discussions and the debates and the dialogue, and so I understand how it works. And again, as I said before, I think it's broken a lot of time because we're not there. Now, I'm gonna use this as an editorial comment. Around election season, everybody in this room gets to see the person that they elected more often, right? Because they need something. You always say, we always put that. You have that friend that only calls when they need something. We have a lot of elected friends that are like that, especially this time of year. March primary coming up. And they want you all to think about all the wonderful things that they've done for you and all the wonderful conversations that you've had that you really haven't had. But in the end, it's election season. That's how the structure's set up. And I think that in order for us to fix the structure, we have to hold those that we elect accountable. Don't talk to me only in March and in November. Remember to talk to me. There are 12 months in a year. Remember to ask me what my thoughts are throughout the year, not just during an election year. And it's important that we also think about, and it's okay, to give an assessment. There was a report that came out last year that really bothered me. And for those of you who remember in the previous administration, there's all this talk about the app, Fix It, right? Fix It. This app, you just go on, you type it in, they're going to fix it. And I remember when the report came out and it showed something that we all know. It said that in the city of San Diego, the average council district had maybe 1.5 miles of unpaved streets and roads. Maybe 1.5 miles. But in District 4 and District 8, it was like 12 and 10 respectively of unpaved streets and roads. And for some reason, that report really bothered me. I'll repeat that. For some reason, that report really bothered me because we have been talking about this app and fix it and all this, and in plain view, driving on gravel, dirt, uneven. And so what I thought was, okay, now that they know it's in a report, they're going to make the effort to fix it. And I still believe that D4 and D8 will come down to the average like everybody else with mile and a half. But I think you have to hold people accountable. I will say that what's important for tomorrow in politics. I was just talking to Michael Bunker about this. Dr. Warren's been doing this for a long time, right? We have a generational opportunity here. We have a generational opportunity here. We cannot allow policymaking to continue to occur as it has for the last 20 years without all voices, problem solving, talking about problems without involving all voices. This is the time when the generational divide needs to bridge. And you need to have millennials, Gen Z, Gen X, and baby boomers having a conversation about what we want and need. About what we want and need and what we expect. And, again, government will not fix itself. And that's important. I remind people that we have to change also. We shouldn't expect that just because we elect somebody that they're going to elect to come and ask us every week what we want. That's not going to happen. Government won't fix itself. We have to fix our own problems by being, again, vocal, visible, consistent, and then bring in all generations. And so it is again, for me, I love what I get a chance to do. But more importantly, I love when I get a chance to remind people of what they should be doing to be inclusive. We have this conversation about an inclusive society, D&I. I spent the last 2 years focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I remember saying in June of 2020, the window that has been opened by the murder of George Floyd will close. Don't be fooled that it'll be open forever. In corporate America, they too will see the opportunity to close that window and stop talking about it. We've done all we need to do. We've talked about it as long as we need to talk about it. And I said, I remember our CEO, Jeff Martin, I said, we can't be that company that says it closes. But most of corporate America has decided it's time. Stop talking about May of 2020. Stop talking about diversity, equity, inclusion. Politics and government should be exemplary in their effort to talk about equity and inclusion and diversity. Having diverse people in a room, having a conversation about how you create equity amongst all communities, and having a conversation every day that starts with, are we being inclusive in this policy response to problems? So corporate America may move away from it, but we should demand that government bring it in even closer. And again, as someone who's had a chance to be involved in this process, I take great pride in my ability to remind people of the importance of this. I'll close with this. Dr. Thompson's giving me the signal. I remind you this, that one of my favorite stories to tell about diversity, equity, and inclusion and how government fails is there was a few years ago in D.C., it's so far away, they were having a conversation about women's health care. I have 2 daughters. Women's health care. And I was like, this could be good. I can't wait to see what they're going to come up with. And I remember the day they announced that panel. They were like, this is the panel we put together to have this conversation about women's health care. It was 11 men. And I thought, I fucking froze it on the TV. I'm like, maybe I'm missing somebody. Somebody back there, somebody. Not just 11 men, 11 white men. And I looked at my oldest and I said, boy, you might be in trouble. And I tell you that in closing because they were all up there so proud of the fact that they were going to discuss women's health care and come up with a solution, not ever stopping to think about, are we inclusive? There are no women. Are we diverse? Nope. Can we really talk about equity? Nope. I'll leave you with that. Thank you very much. Nobody fell asleep, so that's good.
Great, great, great. We're going to hear more from Mitch as the future goes. He's just too involved in Sacramento. Too many things happening up there. I remember when I first came to California with Congressman Gus Hawkins many years ago. He took me to Sacramento. I had never seen a place or heard of it. And it was so interesting when he mentioned Willie Brown, because back in the 1950s, Hawkins was a member of the legislature, and he had been there long enough to have the seniority to become the first black speaker. But Jess Unruh, Mitch, decided that California was not ready for a black man. And so what they did was they created the congressional district that we know as Watts in LA. And they elected him to that district, and they never put his picture up. Because if you saw his picture, he looked like Elmer Fudd. He looked like this little short, bald-headed white man, but he was really black. And so it was the politics of the state in terms of making this happen. But again, it shows when other people manipulate our concerns and our interests. And when I think about Watts, you know, I'd like to mention my wife, Dolores. Can you stand up for a second? Because she is such an important part of continuing a process. Dolores is responsible for creating a rose garden in Watts, at the Watts Senior Center, at a time when people were shooting and killing and marking up everything. And she went in there as director of that center, and they never touched a flower. They never graffitied anything that she had there because of the support that she had garnered from the community. Now, as if that wasn't enough, she went to the East Coast, Paterson, New Jersey, because she's born in New York and raised here, and discovered, as many of you know, her great-grandfather, who was a black abolitionist. And today in Paterson, there's a monument to him and his white counterpart that has now been placed on the National Registry of Historic Sites. So I tell my wife that whatever little things I've done, they don't really, she's bi-coastal in terms of her achievements, and always an inspiration to me in terms of what I'm trying to get done. Okay? Now, the second part of this interlude, Tanya, I want you to come up. You know, I am just so fortunate that I don't have one, but I have two phenomenal daughters, okay? And so one left me, and the other one came and picked up the slack. And so she comes around the time to time. The reason I really want to reinforce Tanya being here is because when you look at all of the changes that we've made in the paper, substantive people, projects that we are underway, this is all her doing. She is an organizer's organizer. And while she's so modest, you know, I think it's a big deal. Tanya, at one point, worked for McGraw-Hill, and she went into the bush country of Alaska by canoe and boat and all that, places I never want to go. Well, she went by plane. When I went to Alaska, I swore I'd never go back. I didn't want to see it again. But she was there training teachers how to teach, working with them. And so she's brought her experience there at NBC and teaching and drama and all the things, and she keeps the ball rolling, because the older I get, the shorter my attention span. Okay? Mr. Hill, he'll be real, okay. And so I want to, but she's a point of contact as we continue this, okay? Because so many times you'll be calling trying to reach me, I'm not there, all right? But she is the one holding the wheels together, and I just wanted you to see her and give her an applause for all the hard work she's doing. Okay? Thank you. All right, okay. And the third most important person in all of this is sitting back there, tucked away. But if you look at this sign, you see GOD Radio. And let's give Leonard Thompson. Leonard is really the brain, one of the brain thrusts behind our media expansion. And believe me, we have some big things that we are about to do. The Voice and Viewpoint has a number of new staff people, but Leonard, he just makes this happen. It's just not by accident. And so I'd like to, you catch two of us every Wednesday at 7 on GOD Radio, as I do from the desk of the editor, and we discuss all kinds of issues nationally, internationally, and we have a conversation. You're always welcome to call in. If you have a view, a thought, or anything, you're welcome to do that. So if I didn't take time for these commercials, since it's our thing, who would? So I just wanted you to know these things. As you continue to read the paper, I want to remind you that we have an app that you can download in Google or Apple, and that while we have the paper online on the website, pretty soon we will be launching a weekly newsletter that will be everyday news updated. And we are under contract with Associated Press, CNN, Newsfinder, and we will be feeding news of people of color into our site every day. So we are accelerating as we prepare to do that. So we're just no longer just the Voice and Viewpoint. We're going to maintain print, but we're expanding in the electronic arena, and we will also pretty soon have the ability, Tanya gets on me when I mention this, but the preacher in me says, speak those things that be not as though they were, and we are preparing to get a couple of drones so that whenever we're having events, we already have a live videographer. We will be able to interview and upload just like 10/8/39. You'll just be able to skip him and come right to the Voice and Viewpoint site and get news, all right? So, the black press is 196 years old. We're 65 years old here. But you need to understand that with all of the stuff happening to local newspapers around the country, we have become the trusted messenger, because people have found out that social media will lie to you, but we won't. And we will tell the story the way it is. And so we need you to get involved in helping us as we tell the story. And we will do those things. All right, the timekeeper is reminding me of where we are. I'm going to bring up at this point Chida Warren Darby, and Chida is going to talk to us a bit about these boards and commissions, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A for the last minutes of what we're doing, and then we'll take those questions and concerns, all right? Chida Warren Darby, Director of Boards and Commissions with Mayor Todd Gloria's office.
Thank you, Dr. Daddy. You look so good today. Look at you. I like that outfit. Good morning, everybody. I'm so glad to be here to talk about boards and commissions. I was just making an observation. This is the first time I've been invited to speak to an audience of people that look like me about boards and commissions. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I get invited to talk to a lot of organizations and people about the work of boards and commissions, and I don't always see a lot of people that look like me in these conversations. I've been a part of the administration since Mayor Gloria got elected. I first was appointed as the Deputy Director of Communications, and then they asked me to take over boards and commissions, and I was told this is the place people go where their careers die. And I was like, well, not on my watch. That's not gonna happen. Boards and commissions, the department was established in 2018. I'm responsible for overseeing approximately 50 boards and commissions. I have about 530 board members and commissioners that I oversee. So it's been a very interesting journey. Some of the things I want to share with you briefly, because as a preacher's kid, I was taught to be yourself, be brief, and be seated. So I'm gonna do that, Dad, thank you. I wanted to share with you the significance about boards and commissions. And when I was tasked to take over this department, we're small but mighty. I was concerned with how to make things better and how to make sure that we were being inclusive and that the community knew what was happening with boards and commissions. I know growing up, I would hear a lot of people say, hey, I want to get on a paid board, and that would be a lot of the focus for individuals. But there's so much work to be done on unpaid boards and commissions. We do not have any paid boards and commissions at the City of San Diego. We can't afford it, but we do have opportunities for people to come and contribute their insight, their expertise, and their experience. I do have some people in here that have served or are serving in our boards and commissions. I know Ms. Maxine Clark was on our Commission on Police Practices. Mr. Mitchell is on our Housing Commission. And I've had Pastor Dennis Hodges, who has been serving on our Citizens Advisory Board. I think I have a few others, but forgive me if I missed it. So one of the things I want to share is that my department coordinates with almost every city department, where we basically equip our board members and commissioners to provide public policy advice. And so these groups get together based on people's expertise and experience, and they review the issues, and they send recommendations to the mayor and the city council. One of the concerns that I observed while overseeing these boards and commissions is the application process. A lot of times people don't know that there's an opportunity to apply to serve. One of the people I like to reference that knows City Hall like the back of her hand is Ms. Francine Maxwell. Before coming to City Hall, I would notice that the website was a little difficult to navigate, information wasn't always readily available, and you have to come find that information. I think as an organization, we could do better at sharing things with you, but we don't have the money for that either. So you have to come to our website and find out this information, but we have a great website called Boards and Commissions. You go to the website and you can see the different boards and commissions that we have that are of interest. We have an accessibility advisory board that deals with accessibility in San Diego. We have the Arts and Culture Commission. I know a lot of you are familiar with the Arts and Culture Commission. We have the Commission on Police Practices. So we have quite a few. And people come to our website and they apply. One of the biggest concerns that I have is that people apply and they don't necessarily read up on what that board or commission does. So someone might apply to Arts and Culture Commission because they like to watercolor. That's not necessarily what we're looking for. We appreciate your enthusiasm to be artistic, but there's so many decisions around funding and opportunities for community that it's important to know what you're getting into. And so I do encourage people to do that. One thing I want to share are the differences between a board, a commission, and a committee. So a board is responsible for setting policies and ensuring that the organization meets its goal. A commission is a group appointed to investigate, report on, and make recommendations on a particular issue or a set of issues. So we know that the Commission on Police Practices has been in the news a lot. That commission has been recently bifurcated from boards and commissions, so now it's independent. They're not under my purview, but they're responsible for doing a lot of investigatory work. And they could spend, I think, Ms. Maxine, you told me you guys would spend like 40 hours sometimes? Yeah. And so you do have to have the time available to serve. One of the problems that we ran into this year was that Governor Gavin Newsom lifted the state of emergency. Prior to that, boards and commissions were meeting virtually. And so that meant people could log on from anywhere and attend a meeting. Now they can't. And so now we have an issue of equity and quorum. And so if the boards and commissions aren't meeting because people aren't attending, then we can't get policy recommendations to go up to the mayor and the city council. I have quite a few groups that haven't met for months. We can't get people to come and show up to the meetings. And so if you are interested in giving advice and recommendations in this way, you have to make sure you're available. You have to make sure your intentions are good. If you're looking to serve just to stack your resume, it's gonna show. You're not showing up to the meetings and not participating. It creates kind of a track record for you and the word gets out. I do like to tell people that you have an opportunity to establish great relationships with other individuals, and the boards and commissions space does tend to be a very small-knit group. And so people learn about you. You learn about other opportunities to serve on other boards and commissions, including paid ones. At the state level, they have about 800 boards and commissions that you can serve on. So that's something really good to consider. I'm in constant communication with Governor Gavin Newsom's appointment of Secretary of Appointments. And so a lot of times if I see someone that has some exceptional qualifications, I do kind of contact the office and say, hey, would you consider this person serving? So the last group that I'll talk about is a committee. A committee is a group appointed to carry out specific tasks, often related to a particular issue or a project. One example of a committee, we have a municipal golf committee. And so that committee is centered around golf courses. A lot of people want to serve on that because they think they can go play golf. That's not necessarily it. There is some work to be done. And so I really just wanted to take this time to share with you that we do have these amazing boards and commissions, and we do take these recommendations to the mayor. He's very interested in learning about what people think. If you're coming from community and you're serving on one of these boards and commissions, your voice matters. You help influence change at City Hall. The last thing I'll mention is that a lot of times, if individuals are interested in serving and they don't get appointed for whatever reason, they kind of give up. I like to say it's good for you to come to the meeting. Get involved in public comment. Those things are documented. The board members and commissioners hear your comments, they hear your recommendations, and basically what you might say in a public comment can, get into their hearts and minds and influence some of the decisions that they'll make. So you should still participate. Find a way to show up. I don't believe that hours are always the most advantageous. Sometimes these meetings take place in the middle of a workday. I know City Council is at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. We can still preview that virtually, but the boards and commissions meet at different times. And so you have to make sure you have the availability to participate in those meetings, but get involved. Read the agendas, read the minutes, ask the questions, and establish a relationship with your council member. A lot of people, and it's not just D4, I know we have people that live all over the city, but know who your council member is. I have boards and commissions that I'm able to appoint people at the recommendation of the council member. So each board and commission, for the most part, has a seat that represents their district. If your council member knows you, they can send your name in for a recommendation. So get involved with the process. Go to the website. I know the city has a very wonky website, but you can navigate it. I'm here to help you if you're interested in learning more how to serve. But I encourage you to look at the boards and commissions, the descriptions, see what it looks like, and your lived experience counts. It matters. So you don't have to have a bunch of degrees and things like that. We want your lived experience and we want your insight. That's all I got, Dr. Daddy.
This is where we're going to open it up for Q&A. Mitch can come back up, and each of you have a mic. If you have a question or a comment, please stand, and we'll get a microphone to you. Can some staff help with the mic scenario? Okay. We should have a mic on each side. And just give your name and your who you're directing your question or comment.
Hi, I'm Pamela Hendrickson. I know a lot of y'all have been here. Hey, y'all. Anyway, this is for Mitch. I like what you said, that we need to bring everybody to the table, the millennials, the seasoned folks, everybody. However, when you're saying that, I'm wondering, how are you doing it? Because, as you said, as black folk, we are not trying to buy a $60,000 electric car. And people need to be aware of who they elect, because it might not happen during your time, but 2035 is coming up soon. And aren't we all supposed to go to electric because the governor has said that we will no longer have gas?
Pam, would you give me your question?
My question is, okay, my question is, these millennials and young folks who are gonna be around driving in 2035, has your organization looked at them and asked them about this? Over?
Thank you, Pam.
So,
You're welcome.
so we have actually, we've actually been engaged in this discussion quite a bit, Pam. It's interesting. My concern with the electric vehicle mandate when it was first being discussed was it didn't take into consideration the harsh reality of how far away people are living from where they work. right? There's a great article in the LA Times 2 weeks ago that said people are moving east for socioeconomic reasons. So the further you get away from the job, the longer your commute is, they better make an EV that will get you there and back. When they first came out, I have an office downtown LA. It's 125 miles from San Diego. And I remember they were trying to get me to buy a Nissan Leaf that gets you 110 miles. And my joke was, well, then I'll be able to see the office from the 110 freeway, and that's about as close as I'm getting. I think that we're attempting to have this conversation now because what we see amongst the millennials is they are more, climate matters. So they're like, okay, maybe we need to get rid of vehicles. But what we don't see in the public policy element of it is, are we building charging stations where people live, right? Range anxiety is real. And, for full disclosure, I drive all electric. There have been days where I'm on 19 miles and I'm coming down Camp Pendleton and there's a little bit of sweat happening because I'm like, I may not make it. I think that we have to have a public policy discussion with the millennials and Gen Z about how we actually, if we're going to have this mandate, how we make it possible. Because that's what government doesn't do. Government just assumes that everybody run out and buy a cute Kia Soul or the new all-electric whatever, and they just drive it and be happy. That is not real public policy. That's not valid.
Okay, thank you. Next question, comment? Yes, Sister Maxwell.
Morning, Francine.
Okay, no, they're switching mics, okay?
Good morning.
Yes.
Mitch, my question for you is, given your position with the Housing Authority, Housing Commission, we have the data that blacks make up 34%. What do you see in the future, from your perspective, to help our bishops, our pastors, have a payment so that they can open up their church lots for our sheltered neighbors?
It's a great question. First of all, I want to say something. Jida mentioned that I'm on the Housing Commission. It is an honor, but it's also frustrating at times. There is a lack of empathy, in my opinion, that's growing around the homelessness. I hear people that I've known for years talk about solutions, putting people on vacant lots where they don't have to see them. And it's heartbreaking, to be honest. I did have a conversation with Pastor Benson, Pastor McPherson about we call them safe lots. Is it possible that we can work with Pastors on Point and UAMIC to find safe lots to let people, stay in their cars? So that is a discussion we're having. If we can build a model, we'll find the money to fund that model. And so it is on the plate. I'm working with the mayor on this. I've gone to the community college presidents. All four of the community college presidents said the same thing. They want to do it. And so, Francine, we're talking about it. And what everybody says is, if there's a will, we'll find the money to do it. What we're trying to figure out is all the things that come with it. Because when you're going to have people staying in church parking lots, you have to have access to washroom facilities. You have to feed them. On our safe lots we have now, I was having this conversation with one of the operators, and they said, well, we only give them snacks. And I said, well, that's not going to work. So we talked to the food bank about trying to provide more meals. It is a discussion that we're having, and I'll be honest. Some people would say it's not unfortunate. I'd say, let me make it positive. We're trying to build a portfolio of options that will allow us to truly address this growing population. And more importantly, the fastest growing segment of the homelessness population are seniors who've done nothing wrong. They're just priced out. And that's where I think that church parking lots are going to be a real opportunity. And we just have to figure that out.
There's a question back here. Let me just make an observation, too. 20 years ago, as we were wrestling with homelessness, Father Joe was building his buildings and everything. We actually had churches like Bethel AME that opened up in the evening as a shelter, and they used their auxiliary building for beds, and they had volunteer members of the church who staffed the facilities at night. And some of our churches that had the space were doing that. And I keep mentioning it because I don't see the churches stepping up in the same way. A lot of people are kind of shell-shocked now in terms of possible litigation and all of those issues. But you know, as Solomon said, there's nothing new under the sun. So we've done a lot of this before. We just need to revisit what we've done and see how we can improve upon it.
I agree with you 100%. And as the chair of the Housing Commission, I'm here to work with the pastors. I think it is an important addition to our portfolio.
Okay, yes.
Hi, yeah, that still happens in Chicago, so that would be good to see that happen here because there are churches that want to do that. My question is actually first, you vocalized some really good points about the polls that you've been doing for a year. Has anybody in the room been polled? Raise your hand if you have.
Anyone?
Then nope. You need to visualize that and bring it here so we can start giving our opinion. Thank you so much.
I didn't hear what you said.
So yes, so the way the pollsters work, so it's a great question, is when we go to the pollsters, they pick the respondents. My only response to them is, again, 50% Caucasian, 50% people of color, and we have to make a decision about where. So you can overlay an area, which I could do that easily. So that's something we will look at. Thank you.
Okay, yes, ma'am. Oh,
Okay, so, and this is a selfish question.
Dr. Richmond.
We've talked about EVs, and you've talked about how, you know, we're not buying them, or we're not going to buy them. I have one. I've been driving an EV for like 6 years. I want to know what you're doing in terms of advocating for infrastructure, because I make that drive to LA, and my struggle is always, okay, where am I going to charge safely when I get ready to go home?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm proud to say that Assemblywoman Autumn Burke, if she were here, would tell you that I was the one that went to her 3 years ago and said, we need to improve the infrastructure. So I proposed two bills, one to put charging at schools and one to put charging at state beaches, parks, and other places of that nature. I coined a phrase, which the mayor heard when he was in Sacramento. He used to say, we need to have a plan. I call it the know where they go plan, right? And you put charging where you know people are going. Home Depots, grocery stores, movie theaters. We will not be successful until we follow that mantra. Know where they go and put them there so that you don't have to have range anxiety. And so I have been advocating quite a bit.
Think about safety, because when I'm traveling alone and I have to charge at night, I have to also think about how well lit it is, you know, how public the area is.
I agree, and that's, you know, again, as I mentioned, as someone, the father of two daughters, I always think about safety first. That's why we said if you put it at like well-lit and like well-lit parking lots where, you know, there's a lot of foot traffic, that is that safety element. But you are absolutely right, and I'm proud of, because I drive electric, I also want to know that I have charging and I'm not sweating, so.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, I'm sorry, are we still over here? Then we'll come over here, okay, yes.
Hi, this is for Chida. So I just Googled that the city of San Diego's budget for 2023 is $5.17 billion. So this is more of a suggestion and a question that if you could take back to them, if they could take less than 0.5% from every department that gets line item money on your budget, you could find the money, because I heard you say twice we can't afford it. We don't have the money. And it's very important for community engagement for us to move past and piggyback on what Mitch Mitchell was saying for engagement and people being involved. We know this is a problem, so now we have to figure out how to solve it. So that's a pretty big budget. So if it's just less than 0.5% that every department contributes to community engagement, I think we could solve that problem.
I just want to say something, Chida, about this. I love what Chida's role is. As someone who has been appointed to a state board by 3 different governors, my funny joke is the first time I got appointed was by Governor Pete Wilson, of all people. And I walked into the room, my first meeting, and everything stopped. Voices, the music, I mean, they were like, wait, how did you get here? But I will say that boards and commissions are so important to get our input into the process. And one of the things that I would suggest, Chida, and if we can talk about how to do this maybe, is a resource fair right here in this building next year where people can see all the boards and commissions that are available both for the city and the state, get more information, and then go home and think about, because Chida's right, it's a time commitment. You know, I'm proud to be on the Housing Commission, but there are a lot of things that we do that take careful consideration, and I can't just show up and be like, what are we doing today? So, but I do think it's important that we find a way to get people more engaged. And again, I've been on city commissions and state boards and commissions, and so try to.
I think that's definitely a valid point. Please know that I have brought my full communications experience into this role, and that is my #1 issue. The city of San Diego does heavy digital communications, and that's not equitable. I come from print media, and it's still very alive. One of the things that people probably don't know in terms of the budget, we've had to account for the fact that the American Rescue Plan dollars are no longer. One thing I didn't mention as far as my department, I am the director of boards and commissions, but I'm also the interim executive director for the Human Relations Commission, and I'm the interim executive director for the Citizens Advisory Board. I don't have capacity. I'm short-staffed. I asked for help. There was no money to give me more staff. I have 4 people on my team. 2 are administrative, but mostly 1. I have an executive assistant and an analyst. The other 2 are executive directors. In that, my department for the first time just got awarded $3.6 million from the California Violence Intervention and Prevention under the Commission on Gang Prevention and Intervention. I have to navigate that. So I have about 5 or 6 jobs in one. So outreach is absolutely important to me. I know the best way to get people in is to tell them. I can barely leave my desk. I'm surprised I was able to come here this morning. So I have literally 4 roles that I'm operating in right now and trying to keep it together because it's necessary, and also trying to be creative in using interns. All my staff works remote. I'm the only one that comes into the office. I work in the mayor's office. And so there are a lot of challenges within the organization that people aren't always aware of. So we have to be creative in outreach. So if people invite me to speak, that helps. If I can come to your group and tell you, that's the biggest issue. The regional chamber calls me all the time. Other organizations, the DIM clubs, they call me all the time. But if our groups aren't asking me to come to take the weight off of what I need to do from an outreach, if I had the budget, listen, I can market. I know marketing, but my hands are tied. And so we tried to go through the budget and find where we could pull things. And so we're kind of going to be in a situation for the next 2 years where we're trying to capsize some things and account for the fact that we're coming out of a pandemic, so to speak. We're not getting those federal dollars, and we have to correct things. We're boosting our tourism again to get more money to come in. So there are a lot of factors. It sounds bad, and when you look at the big dollar amount, where's all that money going? We're paving streets. We're restoring infrastructure. We're cleaning up things that have taken place before we got in this administration. So there's a lot of factors. So if you guys come to City Hall and read up on the documents and see what we're working on, then the pieces will make sense, because the media just gives a snapshot, just a really small glimpse, and there's so much more. And the one thing I really want you guys to know is that you have people in the administration that you can trust. This is one of the most diverse mayoral administrations in the history of mayors.
It is
Yes.
the most diverse.
Yeah.
I've been around City Hall a long time.
2 observations. I'm sorry. I'll hold it, please, because you 3 times.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I hear everybody talking about putting the churches as far as homelessness, and I don't know about all of you guys. I see my pastor sitting over there, and I know that a lot of churches went under a lot of strain during the pandemic, unable to have church, and lost a lot of members. But what I do see in the community is a lot of abandoned buildings as far as it goes to relating to homelessness. So why aren't we going to the owners of those buildings and asking the owners of those buildings, can we store homeless people in their parking lots or in their buildings, because they have been sitting still for 5-10 years with no occupants? Why don't we address that, or look in a way to use that for the homeless problem?
It's a great question. We did a poll on this. 83% of San Diegans agree that empty buildings should be considered as locations for housing the unsheltered. The problem is that you have to get the building owner to agree to it. a lot of the building owners have not come to grips with the new change in the economy. Very few businesses are going to go back to 5 days a week in the office. And so you see all these empty buildings because people don't want to pay leases for building space when there are other employees that working there 2-3 days a week. There's been discussion about city-owned properties. We've had that conversation. I think the mayor has done a good job with 20th and B of setting that up with safe camping. I think the mayor has done a good job. We're looking at Balboa Park and the O-Lot. The building discussion is ongoing. I think what you're going to see, and as the chair of the Housing Commission, I think it's going to be really important. Some of these empty buildings are going to have to become housing that and people say market rate. I say working family housing, right? I think you're going to have to start converting some of these empty Class B buildings into housing because we have this housing crisis, and the more you free those up, the better. I'm going to give the mayor credit. Single room occupancies are coming back. We should never have let single room occupancies disappear. That was a decision made by a previous mayor, and we have the current mayor, Mayor Gloria, said we have to bring these back. And I think you're going to see some of those buildings become single room occupancy units as well. And that will be a tremendous help to the portfolio because some people don't need 700 square feet. They need 350 square feet with a bathroom and a shower, and they're good. And so I think that's what you're going to start to see.
Here's a question over here. We're running down on time, so we have to begin to wrap up our questions. Yes.
Okay, so quickly, I continuously hear about homelessness. And I know I don't look like it, but I was homeless with 2 of my daughters. I have 4 daughters. And I continuously hear that you guys are working on fixing this issue. There's 2 models, Solutions for Change and ECTLC. I lived at ECTLC and I helped get individuals into Solutions for Change. I'm going to encourage you to look at those 2 models.
I appreciate that. And Solutions for Change, we do talk to them regularly. I think what I want everybody to understand about homelessness is, and this is important, there is not one single answer that will allow us to address homelessness. We need to build more housing. We need more shelter capacity. And housing, what we have to do is we have to segment it. You mentioned it with your 2 daughters. I think the single greatest need right now is for seniors. Second behind that is families with children, right? There aren't enough options. And so it's a portfolio approach that is a combination of shelter, housing, services by nonprofits like the 2 you're mentioning. And it's going to take us a while. It's happening way too fast. Cost of living is going up. People are being priced out. We're going to have to move faster. So I agree with you.
As we conclude, I want to make 2 observations. First of all, the reference to the budget. The last time Councilmember Montgomery held a budget hearing was at Mount View in terms of bringing the budget to the community for discussion and input. Only 12 people showed up, including staff folks. And so it's got to be important enough to show up and pay attention to. When I first came here, they didn't have passed the budget out. Before the internet, they were putting it in the library, and now it's on the net. So you have to look at the budget, decide where you want dollars redirected. That's why they have 2 or 3 readings. And then you make those suggestions, and you lobby the other council members, not just your own council member, but the other council members until you know you got the 5 votes that you need to make it happen.
Exactly.
We're going to talk more about that at our future meetings. I know I see the lady over here. She's going to be, well, there are 2 last comments. One more piece important here because we haven't mentioned SANDAG. I'm going to get right to you. SANDAG represents the San Diego Area Council of Governments. And the reason we have SANDAG is because within San Diego County, we have both charter and general purpose cities. The city of San Diego is a charter city, so it's sovereign like the county. So these people can only work together if they voluntarily do it. And that's how they entered into these intergovernmental relationship setups. So you need to come out and we help you understand how all of this works, because we have some phenomenal people in our community that have been involved. in terms of getting this done. And it's no charge, we'll make it happen. Yes, we are over here, Dr. Robinson, and then we'll come back. Yes.
Question for Mr. Mitchell. We talk about the housing, we talk about all these breakfast table issues going up, utilities, electric, and water. And with all these housing issues we have, where is the water going to come from by 2035, unless we have a couple more bomb cyclones?
Yeah, that's true. That last hurricane, the problem is we didn't collect any of that water. It all ran into the ocean. That's the problem with it. So this is a good question, and this is where SANDAG comes in as well. Water, the state law says now, but when you're going to approve a development, you have to actually have the water for it. We're seeing this unfortunate situation play out at the state level because the water agencies are now fighting, right? The two of them want to get cheaper water. And when they leave, if we don't do it right, it just makes everybody's water bill go up. Same thing that happened on utilities. We're planning for the future, but we're planning with the thought that we're going to be serving everybody, and we have to be much more focused on cost impacts and making sure that no matter what, you have the power that you need. And that is a big discussion. I don't think that we've done a great job up to this point of really looking at it with enough detail at the state level. It's something that has to get better. And the reason why, the people making the plans for you are in San Francisco or in Sacramento. I always say this about boards and commissions. Just give me somebody that knows the freeway system in San Diego before you ask them to talk about what we need here.
Let me just say that one of our future sessions will deal exclusively with water because there's so much involved. Metropolitan Water Authority, the lawsuits we've been in with them for the past 15 years, some of them we've settled. The whole fact that people who try to conserve water find the bill going up, your bill goes up because there's fewer people paying, but the expenses of operating the system rise. So we're going to discuss all of those in the future. Those are reasons to come back, and we're making a note to put that. This is my last comment, and then I'm going to have LaTanya make an introduction before we go.
Thank you so much for handing me the microphone. My name is Shu Ting. I'm with the Black Chamber of Commerce, and I have a comment and a question for Mitch. So, in my opinion, public policy isn't created equal, especially when it comes to EV. So, two aspects of it. First, the infrastructure. There are not enough infrastructure in San Diego, as we all know. The government is doing their best to create charging structures on the highway in Whole Foods parking lot, but at the same time, not a lot of underserved communities are going to Whole Foods to charge their EV. It's not accessible. There's one thing that I can think of. I did a EV research in grad school, was that to create more charging structures in people's homes, in the apartment buildings, in the parking lots, and like McDonald's on by the highway, because this
You need to be brief.
Sorry. Okay.
Thank you.
The question is, how, in your view, how can the government make the public policy more equitable, especially for EV charging for the underserved community?
Yeah, it's a short answer. This goes back to what I said in my speech. We need to decide what we want and then hold people accountable for building it. If you want to have 1,000 charging stations in the District 4, then put that out there on the plan. I think, Donna, we've talked about this. We have to create a plan that we can honestly say is an improvement over what we have today, and that has to be around everything from EV charging to streets and roads to school improvements. But you have to create a plan and then present it and say, this is what we're judging you on, your progress as it relates to what we've asked for. That's how you get it done.
Thank you. Let's give our panelists a good applause here. Before you leave, I want LaTanya to make some introductions.
Yes, we would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge our phenomenal staff, Sabine Kepler, Amar Beatty, Maria Jimenez. If we could stand. Jayla Palmer and Jasmine Webster. We couldn't do it without you. And we also want to introduce our reporting team. Daryl Wheeler, please stand if you're here still, Daryl. Barbara Smith, Macy Meinhardt, Erica Randall, and Sean Smith Hill, 2 new members of our freelance team. Thank you.
And of course, our preeminent photographer, Mr. Mike Norris. All right. Okay. With that, we are going to conclude this. We thank you for being here. You can email us any comments that you have. We're planning the next month is going to be of extreme importance because we're going to be dealing with the ethnic communities in relationship to incidents of hate in San Diego. And so we're going to have people from across spectrum, and that's going to be Asian, African, Latino, Vietnamese, Arabic. We're having all these elements come together because we, in the African American community in the state of California, we still have the highest incidence of hate crimes. And so we're going to be dealing with those things. And we're also going to be dealing with some of the politics because we'll be less than a month away from a special election. I was on a call with the governor last week, and we have a big concern. Mitch, you appreciate this. After Kamala Harris was named to be vice president, and we had a vacancy, we were pushing for another African-American woman to go into that position. Instead, the governor appointed Padilla, who was Secretary of State, who opened that position up for Shirley Weber to become secretary. Well, now we are 5 months from the primary. Last week, we in the African-American community saying, what about the appointment? Because Diane, I think, is going to try to hang on and die in the office. It seems to be the plan. But the governor is now saying that was 2 years ago, and now that we're only 5 months out, he doesn't want to get involved in trying to appoint someone. So we need to stay on top of this and let him know that if he has any ambitions politically beyond being governor, he better pay attention to what we're saying. Is that all right, Mitch? Okay, all right. We want to thank you, and again, we look forward to next time. This concludes it.
And we bring the reliable energy that powers all you do. SDG&E. Learn more at bringtheenergy.com.
Do you have a product line such as merchandise or new music? Or perhaps a special event or change in services you offer? Let us help you get the word out. Here at GODradio1.com.